The AFC North, the Browns are now 6.5 to 1 to win the division. They would have been in first place if they had won on Monday afternoon against the Raiders. Instead, they find themselves in a very precarious position, a very uncomfortable position. And I
But
don't
tell
mean
me
the
this
back of a
much.
I don't mean the back of a Volkswagen, Brady.
The Steelers are technically third right now, though, but they have worse odds.
Yes, I think that's because of the Browns' schedule. Maybe the Bengals are the favorites.
Well, probably more Pittsburgh schedule because they're at Kansas City this next week.
That is correct. It is Pittsburgh's schedule. You're right.
Although Cleveland's at Green Bay, so it's not like that's. I mean, both those teams are probably going to lose.
I don't really like either of those odds there. I just don't. I don't mainly because I don't expect either of them to win the division. But I mean, I don't know that I trust any of these teams. I don't know that I trust any of these AFC North teams.
Here's the better question that I think you should ask in this instance, because honestly, it's so tough to call right now. Like, we'll know between at least Baltimore and Cincinnati, depending on who wins this week's game between those two, who's obviously probably in the driver's seat for the division, right? At least that's my feeling. I think it'll be much more clear a week from now. I think the better question is, if you're in the playoffs in the AFC, which one of these teams do you least want to play?
That's a very good question. I would say, I mean, obviously, a lot depends on health, but I think right now the team I would least want to play, like in this exact moment, is probably the Bengals.
We're saying, though, everyone's healthy, everyone's back.
I don't want to play the Browns.
Wow. Okay.
Because I mean, Baltimore is obviously terrifying with Lamar Jackson, but their defense is just, you can throw on them all day. A fully healthy Browns defense is really good.
Really good.
If they have all their offensive linemen, Chubb, and a reasonable option at quarterback, I think they're just a very difficult team to play against.
I feel like Cincinnati's the team I'd pick right now.
Oh, that's who I said. But then, okay.
Well, no, but I'm saying fully healthy.
Even
if Lamar's back, all teams healthy, Browns as well, I'd still pick Cincinnati.
Okay. How come?
I think their combination of what they can do throwing the football, the rushing attack. I think their defense, the way they've played it. Trey Hendrickson's gone, 10 games straight or something with a sack? I mean,
he's been awesome.
They've really come along on both sides of the ball all the way around. I just think they're one of those teams that, like, I'm not saying could catch fire, but could kind of surprise you and end up being like similar to the Tennessee Titans and go on like a little bit of a run. I don't know that even with seeing the Browns win a game last year in the playoffs, get to the next round, the divisional round, I don't know that I foresee that from them, at least offensively, the way they've looked this year. We're not even giving the Steelers a chance at this point. And it's kind of crazy considering like the year TJ Watt's putting together as maybe defensive MVP. And then you look at, the Baltimore Ravens, and as much respect as you have for what Lamar and what he's done, they just have never improved throwing the football. It seems like for whatever reason, they're just off, and it really just is what it is.
The thing about the Bengals, too, that I don't think is getting enough attention is obviously we've never seen Joe Burrow in the playoffs.
Right.
Joe Burrow showed us, and in college in the playoffs, that he is more than, and in the regular season, that he is more than capable of elevating his play on a big stage. And, as much as, when the Bengals had Andy Dalton, you felt like they just weren't going to get a great game from their quarterback in the playoffs in these one game, showdown, big stage situations. With Joe Burrow, I feel pretty confident that he's going to come in there and deal, because that's just who he is.
Sure. I mean, we saw it one year, right? I mean, Jamar Chase was a part of that. Dalton finished off his college career well with a big Rose Bowl win, going undefeated that year. I love
Andy Dalton. I'm just saying he never won a playoff.
No. I'm just saying if we're going back to college, it's like, well, like Dalton kind of proved it too, at least for TCU standards and all that, from what they had played in. It wasn't on like a college football playoff standard, but it wasn't like he shot.
And then JJ Watt said, and I took that personally and picked him off to the house in the playoffs, in the NFL playoffs.
And the rest is history.
Yeah.
Yada. And obviously, like Ben has been there before, Lamar's been there before. So, like, typically in that case, you'd think that you'd rely on the guys who have been there, are more confident, understand what to expect out of it, how different that speed is from even just the regular season speed. But just something tells me like they would be able to kind of play dangerously. Like he's kind of got that knack about him. And so I don't worry so much about him and how he'll perform I worry about the offensive line, then I worry about the defense. Like I worry how they perform or will perform versus some of the best teams in the AFC. But I don't have any reservations about him. But I just think the way that team's playing right now, and even how they're playing right now with a healthy team versus the rest of them, that would probably be my pick right now. But again, we get to see these teams all play each other, so we'll kind of figure it out at the end of the season.
Yes, we will. So if you were betting on, so Cincinnati and Baltimore play this week in Cincinnati. The Bengals still have to play the Chiefs and then at the Browns. Excuse me. The Ravens are at the Bengals, of course. Home against the Rams and home against the Steelers. I mean, all three of these teams, Chiefs, Rams, Packers, Chiefs. I think it might come down. I mean, do we think any of those teams upset one of those high caliber squads?
I mean, it's hard to think that Pittsburgh or Cleveland will beat Kansas City or Green Bay, respectively. And then this week, I mean, is Lamar back? Is he not? I mean, as good as Tyler Huntley was, it's not quite the same element running the football. Although I will say this, I mean, he coming out of college was a more accurate passer at Utah. He was one of the better deep ball throwers as far as accuracy. But what you didn't see was the athleticism that we saw really versus Green Bay versus Cleveland before that, because they just didn't run the quarterback like that. It was like just hand it off to Zach Moss in a gap blocking scheme or man blocking scheme, and then some RPO or take shots or screens. Like that was it. And now you're watching him going, oh, like he fits well within the system too when you let him run around a little bit as well. But it's not quite to the magnitude of what Lamar Jackson is.
No.
So, I mean, look, I think this game this week, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and then Cincinnati, Cleveland to finish in week 18. Those are the two games. Because I think it's going to be – I mean, I think the Steelers are out. I've said this kind of for a while now. I just don't have much faith in them and being able to win it and watch they kind of prove me wrong and win out the rest of the way. But
right.
I think that's where it's won and lost. The winner between Cincinnati and Baltimore ends up being that elimination for the other. And then you see, again, Cincinnati versus Cleveland will end up either playing spoiler for Cleveland or Cincinnati then catapults itself to win the division.
I mean, the Steelers are 7-6-1. That game against Tennessee, the turnovers they got to get back into that game and then to take the lead were some of the flukiest turnovers you'll ever see. It's just like ball pops up in the air, like hits off a helmet, lands in a Steelers player's hands. They end up kicking a bunch of field goals. I agree with you. I don't think they have the juice to rip off. And I think you need 10 wins. You probably need 10 wins.
Or you're 7-1 like Pittsburgh is. I don't know. I mean, that's how the tie comes into play, right?
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you this though: is Baltimore the easiest path? Like, granted, they play on the road versus Cincinnati, but then you're home for your last two versus the Rams and Steelers.
Baltimore could definitely beat the Rams at home
for sure, and I obviously they could beat the Steelers at home. So
yeah,
like I look at it and go, like, really this week, like I think they have the easiest path if you're just looking at their schedule. But something about I mean, Cleveland's got to go back-to-back weeks on the road, but think about the matchup of Cleveland and their rushing attack and that defense, especially without Bakhtiari still, and who knows how healthy Myles Garrett's going to be, and obviously Takk McKinley's out for the year. But, I mean, that kind of matchup maybe works, like where if you could sneak a win versus Green Bay, you go to Pittsburgh, you beat them there before, you did it last year in the playoffs, and then Cincinnati at the end, like maybe it sets up well for Cleveland. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just a fan of me, former player, hoping that it works out well for them.
By the way, I was just noticing because you have behind you, people can see it on YouTube, youtube.com/pick6. Subscribe. You played at Notre Dame and then Cleveland. Very just like the solid colors. Like there's no, you don't have like tiger stripes on any of your helmets. That's kind of cool, that you're, very traditional Midwestern block color.
Our high school helmets too were they're like a block black color. We didn't have any stripes or anything like that too, but we did have all these little
like you don't even have like an N on it or a C on it, or they're
just straight up. Now, what we did in high school, but the difference was you'd get these little shamrock stickers that you end up it was kind of like Ohio State, how they used to have the Buckeye stickers.
You get for every touchdown you throw, you get a little shamrock.
Something like that. And so it would be just be decorated by the end of it, which that I still think to this day, that's one of the coolest swag, low-key things ever. When you have a plain helmet and it's decorated with
and you're just coated. Yeah, it's like
coated with
real
stickers
good.
And people, you just come out and people are like, that dude just looks different, and you could tell like he's got like the war emblem, like everything's on there.
Yeah.
And then some of them would always be like scuffed up just from whatever hit, whatever else happened. Because that's the only thing is you can never clean the helmet because you had all the stickers on it. So you wore the war paint the rest of the season.
Yeah, I love it. All right, let's take a so to the point on. It feels like maybe Baltimore and Cincinnati is. I know it's not an elimination game, but if Cincinnati wins the game, loses to the Chiefs, and beats the Browns, Baltimore cannot jump them because they would have the tiebreaker head-to-head over Baltimore. So it does feel a little like it's a big one for Baltimore.
It's huge.
It's a huge game for Baltimore to win that one. If they win that, they would then theoretically be in the driver's seat, but Cincinnati could obviously upset. There's a lot to there's a lot of different ways this can go.
And the crazy thing for Cleveland and Pittsburgh is like they could end up being that team that plays spoiler in Green Bay and Kansas City's bid to have the #1 overall seed, like on each side to get that bye.